The Ten Commandments by Roderick C. Meredith, 10th edition, March 2021. The Fourth Commandment. The Fourth Commandment stated, "We have already discussed the prevalent sin of putting other gods in the place of the true God. We learned that God commands us to worship Him directly and to avoid using any image or picture to remind us of the great Creator or any aid to worship. We were warned against the vain use of the name of Almighty God, which stands for His position, His character, His power, His office as the great ruler of this entire universe." The Fourth Commandment completes the first section of the Ten Commandments, which deals with man's relationship to God. It provides for the perpetual observance of a sign of the relationship between God and man. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do work, nor you, nor your son, or your daughter, nor your male servant, or your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth, the sea, and all that's in it, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Exodus 20:8-11. This command is, in its wording, the longest of any of the 10. It is placed, protectively, as it were, in the very midst of the 10 Commandments. Yet sad to say, it is the one commandment about which men reason and argue most, and which they would most quickly tear asunder and try to separate from the rest of God's law. Notice that it starts out with the injunction to remember. Its very statement proves that the Sabbath command was already understood by God's chosen people, and that, in incorporating it in part of His covenant, God was reminding them of a spiritual command of which they already had knowledge. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. You cannot keep cold water hot, and mortal men cannot make anything holy. Therefore, to fully grasp the significance of this divine command, we need to learn who made the Sabbath day holy and when. Jesus said the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is also the Lord of the Sabbath. Mark 2:27-28. Notice that Jesus said the Sabbath day was made. Whatever was made has a maker. Notice also that Jesus did not say that the Sabbath was made only for the Jewish people, but for man, for all mankind, in other words. Then He stated that He, Christ, is Lord of the Sabbath. In this statement, He claims to be not the destroyer of the Sabbath, but the Lord of the Sabbath. In His human life, Jesus kept the Sabbath, and many verses in the four Gospels are devoted to His instructions to the disciples on how it should be kept and freeing it from the traditions that the Jews had added. But before continuing, let us answer this question: who made the Sabbath day? In understanding the command to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, and understanding who made the Sabbath in the first place, we need to turn to an account in the very beginning of God's creation. The New Testament gives us such an account in the first chapter of the Gospel according to John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and He was in the beginning with God, and all things were made through Him, and without Him nothing was made that was made. John 1:1-3. Here we find Jesus Christ described as the Word, or spokesman, as the original Greek may properly be rendered. This passage reveals that Jesus has been with the Father from the beginning, and that nothing was made without Him, without Jesus Christ. As the second person in the Godhead, the Father used Him as the instrument through whom the creation was brought into being. The Apostle Paul was inspired to speak of how God created all things through Jesus Christ. Ephesians 3:9. In Hebrews, we find Christ described as the Son of God, whom He has appointed heir of all things, through whom He has made the worlds. Hebrews 1:2. These and many other scriptures show that the person in the Godhead who later became Jesus Christ was who actually carried out the job of creation. He was the one who said, "Let there be light," and there was light. He was the one who created man and set him on the earth in the Garden of Eden. So speaking in particular of him who did the creating, the inspired writer of Genesis states, "And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made." Genesis 2:2-3. Jesus said that the Sabbath was made for man. Here we see that the Sabbath was made when man was made, and it was made by the divine being who later became Jesus Christ. It was made by an intrinsic part of the environment that surrounded mankind and was made by God in the 7 days of creation. Notice that God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. Such an honor was not conferred on any of the preceding 6 days. When God blesses something, he bestows his divine favor on it and his divine presence in that thing. The very word sanctify means to set apart for holy use or purpose. Thus, we see that in the very act of creation, the Almighty put his divine favor upon and set apart for holy use and purpose a certain space of the most enduring thing there is, time.